So I know we're talking about home, but I want to talk about your get-up, Guy. Great. Always looking good, mate. What is this number today?
Well, I greeted you with a much more colourful shirt, and then I saw that you were in black and grey, and I didn't want to.
No, yeah.
I also wanted the focus to be
on the background.
This home that you've created, and welcome back to the home.
Thanks for having us. The way you express yourself is so key, and you do that through your home. But one of the things why I'm so obsessed by home and why I talk about it is that, sometimes I think in our society, what happens is we go, let's create a shelter, a house, and we're going to move in and live in it. And then we completely skip the idea of creating a home or the essence of home, and then start going straight to like, what bathroom tile are we going to have? And I just think that as a society, when we talk about home, we miss that thing in the middle between having a house and shelter and then choosing a bathroom tile. And there's this essence that's in the middle, and we don't talk about it enough. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today.
Absolutely. We didn't grow up in a house like this.
No.
There are countless nights where we say, who are we? What is this? We say it all the time. When I look back at my childhood, and especially centred around the home we grew up in, it was just, I always just say I was so lucky.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I don't mean lucky in material wealth at all. I mean lucky in we never went without love or and there was love in every aspect. There was love in the way
in breakfast
beds were made, in the way food was made, in every sense.
So when you were growing up, it sounds like you had safety, security, and then felt loved and you belonged, and then you went from there. Do you have any moments of real joy that you remember at home, or on the other side, like tragedy and things like that? Because, I think sometimes we forget that, home is the background to our lives.
Well, I guess from the very beginning. So I was born in Malaysia, and at age of 6, we moved here. And so I was pretty young. My one recollection of the house that I lived in as a toddler and stuff is more to do with my next door neighbour who was obsessed with Michael Jackson. And it must have been...
I think we can finish everything.
Oh, yes, there you go. They must have been very thin walls because, you had Beat It and Thriller and everything blaring loud every morning.
Have you been back to that house in Malaysia?
I did recently. And it was amazing going back as an adult because... the things that when you're young, like I remember playing in the drains, and in my memory, it's like almost like Ninja Turtles.
It's the Borrables.
It's like these massive drains, and then when I went back, I saw the same drains. Yeah. They're not big, they're just these little roadside drains, and you remember seeing stray cats, and so going back, I realised, it was very humble where we lived, and I visited a gravesite where my grandfather is buried, and my grandfather I'm named after, Guy Theodore Sebastian, so it's a little bit morbid going to a cemetery and seeing a gravestone with your name on it.
Yeah.
It was amazing to go back.
What was the house? You say it was like a semi-detached kind of house?
At the start, and then we moved into another house, and there was a park across the road, and it's more the things that happened in that time that there is only a few little memories. Like I remember running out and disobeying my parents, and we just got this dog, and they said, clean your room and, don't take the dog out. We lived across the road from a park, and I didn't listen. And I took this little puppy across to the park. The puppy ran away from me and got run over. Right. So that's why I treasure little Ronnie so much, because I'm traumatised. But I can tell you, I listened to my mum and dad from that. It was a tough lesson to learn.
Wow, that is traumatic.
And it was quite traumatic. I remember all the details of trying to revive. This thing was puppy was still kind of half alive, and it was also, so you remember those? I remember when my bike got stolen, I left it out the front, and it was the day after Christmas. I always wanted a bike. Bike got stolen. And I think it's those events that actually form your memory of the house.
That's right.
Because I'm actually remembering where I was as I was running down the steps.
Yes, exactly.
Holding this dog.
Yep.
Now, would I remember the steps if the actual event hadn't been etched into my mind?
No.
I'm not going to randomly remember these steps or randomly remember the thing that we had on the wall as a tribute to this puppy.
And what, you were 5 or something? Or?
I would have been, 5,
God.
4 or 5.
That's a serious, that would have changed you, man, in terms of just the drama of that. So it's almost like you probably got an early flash of responsibility.
I think, and also
pain.
An early flash of guilt.
Yeah, right.
What true guilt was.
Oh, God.
Like it was like, I've caused all of these people this pain, and this dog isn't there anymore.
No.
Because of me?
It's quite a different culture to here, right, in terms of home. I suppose I'm curious to see if there was a different way of life in that home compared to the way of life you might have had in an Aussie home, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it's very food-based in Malaysia. So everything was around food, you know, and I had a lot of cousins. We would go out, they say makan. Makan means eat in Malaysia. So we would go at 10 o'clock at night because the streets would become these little street food parades, like markets.
Yeah.
You know, I would order the sugar cane. They would just pure sugar. They would just get these sugar canes through the machine.
10 o'clock at night.
10 o'clock at night, we'd order satay, and they're sort of stalls. So you sit in the central area and then you go, we'll get some satay and some rendang and some roti canai. And so then you sit in the middle and then Dad goes and gets it all. And
it sounds like you had a pretty big family or extended family.
Well, yeah, so
would they all come to your house? Do you have memories of being a little kid and they all came over?
We used to mainly gather at the house where my grandma lived. So I only had one living grandparent, and she passed a few years ago. But that was my dad's mum, and she was the most incredible cook. Loved cooking for the family, and so we would all gather at their house, which was my auntie's house, and so it was really good. Lots of music, lots of you know, my dad's other brother, Uncle Larry, he's a music pastor, so he was at church playing keyboards, and he was probably one of the first people that really got me into music. You know, parents come in here and their kids start playing the piano. The parents are always like, oh, no. They think it's something that's so precious to me, as in I don't want to play it. And I'm always saying to the parents, no, it is there for them. Even if they're bashing on it, as long as they're obviously respectful and not throwing Coca-Cola and things in the piano. But I love that kids who aren't musical can't help but walk past this space and start making noises, because it's making noises that lead to things, you know. It's and so I love where it is. Because
I mean, I remember that's going to influence them in their lives as well, those other kids, not even your own family.
Yeah.
And the idea that when you open these all up, so you can see this piano from everywhere, right?
Oh yeah, and it's heard from everywhere. Sometimes purposely I'll just come down here and I'll tinkle along, and before I know it, they're asleep. I mean, it's just
Imagine going to bed to that at night.
I know.
It's beautiful.
There's something about a piano. I don't know what it is. A lot happened through our family. It was a cousin's wedding, one of the first times I sung, and that was with my older brother, Ollie. Ollie plays keys, and he's 3.5 years older to me, and so I sang at my Auntie Sharon's wedding. That was one of the first times I had sang publicly. I completely screwed it up. Properly messed it up. I got too anxious and tense, and I went to sing and nothing came out, and Ollie's just looked at me and he's like,
where are you?
Look into my eyes, you'll see. It was that everything you do, I'll do it for you, bright eyed. He just rescued me. And so I just stood there for the rest of the song, just nothing would come out. But, and then the family all afterwards were like, study hard, make sure you study hard. I don't know if music is for you. But,
that's classic. So your dad moved the family to Adelaide, or as we like to call it, Radelaide.
Yes.
Through work.
Yeah.
For work.
So my dad was a geologist, so he travelled a lot for work. He was on different oil rigs, and actually at the time he was coming back and forth to Australia, which is what prompted the move eventually. So, and then I spent a bulk of my life in this Salisbury East home, very simple home, but a decent sized block, quite a good block, and
with the garden and stuff.
Had a great backyard and sort of a 2-tier backyard, just concrete. That's where we used to play backyard cricket, But I loved that house, It was all of my memories were there, and trying to explain to my kids who have so many activities to do, even in this backyard, the things that we've tried to give them to just keep them occupied. The time that we spent most doing after school was across the street between us and Bridge Road, which is a very main road, is this little nature strip. There was this tree that was across the road from us, and it had this bouncy branch, this flexible branch that you could swing on, and it'd flick you up in the air, and you could just swing on it. Every night was so excited to get home to just bounce on this branch, and we'd have so many great times, and we'd sit up there and we'd have sandwiches, and it's funny because I've realised that there's no way I can inject that into my kids, and it's something I've had to come to peace with that, because so often you try and tell your kids when I was growing up, we did that, and you try and emulate that feeling. But I'm doing that in a completely different home and a different, so how do I do that in this home? And that's what I've had to figure out, is that I'm never going to teach them the same things because the lessons I learned were because of the environment that my parents had built, whereas I've built them a completely different environment. How do I teach them the same things?
All the stories you just told are all outdoor stories.
Yeah.
So it's funny, isn't it? When you think about, the first thing comes to mind is, so what was the actual house like? Is it because it was a small house that you were always outside, or was it just, or was coming inside just about eating and sleeping?
My memories of that house was that there wasn't much light at all, and I think most of the windows came in from the backyard, but Dad had put a big pergola across the backyard, so a lot of that light that would normally flow through was gone.
Interesting that the way you remember your actual home is quite a dark place. It was quite dark,
and I think that's why. I mean, as a kid, you can't, if there's light outside, you go towards the light.
That's it. Yeah.
And so, a lot of time was spent outside. My dad, as I said, he's very itchy fingers. He's always doing stuff. So he put slate throughout the house, put it himself, so it was quite undulating. There was a few stubbed toes and things like that.
But that would have been very natural landscape.
It was
bringing the outside in.
Exactly. I think coming from cheaper houses where I grew up in houses where you're trying to maximise the space. When you walk into a house where you go, you've purposely left this void?
Well, that's what your dad says.
Yeah, my dad's like, you could have used this space here and you could have used all this space. So, But it's the fact that you didn't use it and you've let it breathe. You go, you chose to do that with the space? I think that's what creates this feeling of grandeur.
Well, it's another form of value.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's value in square metres of floor, but there's also great value in understanding a space three-dimensionally.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, what we're usually accustomed to is only thinking horizontally. Well, when I'm designing a place, I'm thinking not only horizontally, but also vertically.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you can create volume, then you can start thinking on another level, like how do you get some curves into this place to help with the narrative, which is where the curves of the black piano work with the curves of the helical stair. And if you think about it as a floor plan, the whole house is actually wrapping around like a camera lens, a focal point, and then goes like that. And so your life is actually, in terms of the architecture, wrapping around your essence, which is your piano. You're sort of self-taught in music, yeah. And so does that mean you had instruments in your bedroom that you shared with your bro, or how did that work?
Sort of.
Did you have a piano at home like you do today?
Yeah, my older brother had a keyboard, but I never played keyboards. I played drums, so growing up I played drums.
But I imagine you must have like been bashing away at home learning this stuff at some point. Like, what happened?
Well, I mean, when it comes to singing, like on a technical level, I would spend 6-7 hours without blinking by the stereo.
What, in your bedroom? Did you have a stereo in your bedroom?
In my lounge room. So you know those old school decks where they had the tape, the record on the top, then they had the two tape decks and then the CD. But this was tapes when I was younger. So you tape your favourite songs off the radio. My go-to were people like Boyz II Men and Brian McKnight, Otis Redding, Sam Cooke. My dad had this old Platters record. Only You was one of the first songs I learnt. And so I would take these songs and I would hear someone like Wanya Morris, who's in Boyz II Men. He would do this big trick. Oh. Now, the average person, I figured out later, can't really do that.
No, guy, they can't.
I didn't know. I just heard it and I was like, how the heck did he do that? Oh. Yeah. Now, that would take me days to learn when I was young, because I didn't have the elasticity. I didn't have the ability. So like a muscle, you train it and you train it and you start with, oh. So you do that for an hour. Yeah. Oh. Then you add the next bit, oh.
But the first one, you knew it wasn't there yet.
Oh,
yeah, so you could hear.
I would practice for hours every day doing those things. I would have started that at 6 or 7. I remember starting that in Malaysia before leaving.
So your dad had come home. Oh, there's Guy over next to the stereo and you're just doing your thing?
I'm just doing these things. But I didn't start playing piano until I was forced to, which was during uni. So I ended up studying medical radiation because I listened to the advice, make sure you study. You know? So I studied medical radiation, and to get through life and uni, I was broke. I started singing, teaching in various schools. Now, I'd never had a lesson. So how am I qualified to give them? I was really anxious about that, but I knew how to sing according to my method. I knew what worked for me, and it got me to this certain level. So I just taught that. And I even made these CDs. I burnt these CDs for every one of my students. It was called a run CD because everyone wanted to learn how to do these runs, these tricks. That was my thing. That's the edge I had. So I would start it like, oh. So every lesson would build just out a couple of notes, and then.
Well, that's what you did in the living room.
That's what I would do in the living room. So I brought that in.
Taught them that.
But in singing teaching, you got to warm up your students. You've got to play scales on the piano, and then you've got to accompany them. So before my lessons, I'm learning these different songs to teach myself. So it forced me to learn piano, and that's really how I learned.
Were your brothers join in the music, or was it just more a you thing?
Oh, no.
No, they're all in it as well.
Our family sing-alongs were epic. Yeah. They still are. I mean, around this piano, you have no idea. Yeah. And it's still my older brother that leads it. It's always Ollie. Ollie will lead the charge.
Yeah, right. Like, I love it how you've got your arias over there, right? Because to me, that's like the pool room, right? You know, in the castle, the pool room.
Yeah.
And the pool room was not about the dad. The pool room was about that, like, if anything was good, it went in the pool room.
Yeah.
And that symbolised what the family were doing together. So you put them in your home because you want everyone who's been part of that support system in the home to enable you to be successful. Well, it's not just you in the world. Like, all these things that are happening in this home help you. You're saying, here's my arias. Yeah, they were awarded to me, but we did it.
See, that's a nice, humble way of putting it. I just put it there so people would ask me about all my hits and stuff.
I knew he'd say that.
Going through Idol is a weird process to start a career out of, because you can't help but feel anything but gratitude and almost this sense of I owe this to people, because they've literally gone,
we'll choose him. Yeah.
We're going to vote for you. We'll vote. It'll cost us 55 cents.
Yeah.
We're spending actual money. We never met you, but we think you should achieve your dreams.
Yeah.
I think I went into it with that almost always something I would carry, not in the negative sense, but I would carry it as almost like a fuel to I better get music out.
Yeah.
I better finish it on by this time. I need to keep that going.
This studio's been years and years of... I mean, this is literally the dream. I always dreamt of a studio where I would be able to have main monitors like that. And I know that sounds very boring to people, but having huge Genelecs in the wall in your home is unheard of. To be able to budget for a space like this means I've got to say to myself, will I be able to pay for this?
Yeah,
and
fund
have
it through your work.
Will it pay
for
itself off? It's going to cause me to work better and work more. The thing about my industry is it is almost like a lottery when it comes to songwriters, for example. I mean, I've just been away working with a whole bunch of different songwriters. Now, they might spend 15 years writing hundreds, thousands of songs, but it only takes that one Taylor Swift cut or Bruno Mars or some huge artist hears this song and they're like, I need this song.
Right.
I've always viewed this space as I'm one song away from it.
The sound is different in here because it's got two walls. It's a big...
Well, it's a room within a room. So the thing about acoustics is it's actually airspace that, you know, it's not necessarily thickness.
No.
I can be in here at 2 a.m. and I've got everything cranked. That's come down from upstairs. That's a big boy too. This is one of my favourites. I never used to love whiskey that was peaty at all. I would always go for the sort of more clean Japanese.
So is that a peaty one?
That's a bit more peaty. Arbalor's a bit more peaty. This isn't a whiskey.
No,
a whiskey appreciation.
Whiskey's part of home.
Well, absolutely.
You got to see the bar. So you come up here, and this is where you said you came up and hid during COVID.
And I write a lot of lyrics up here. So I'll go from the studio up to here, and I'll sit here, and you know, there's times of the year where there's whales and everything. I mean, you've been here when the whales have been jumping, and it's a pretty magic spot.
So you're talking about the responsibility. You realised that in Idol, that you had that greater responsibility.
I definitely think from the Idol moment of even winning, I definitely understood there was a responsibility that came with that. So once I start to progress in my career and have a few years under my belt, you then start seeing, oh my gosh, this person's just written to me about this and how my song has affected them and helped them through this, and those stories start to increase, and you know, you start doing things like you might do a Make-A-Wish, like something as simple as just going and singing for someone, and that's it. Like things that I guess you can't even fathom, you can't wrap your head around it, that just a performance can mean so much to a family. It can invoke so many emotions and, you know, memories and things that are healing and things that really, it's powerful.
The connection that you create there, like that community, that's what really interests me, because that's home, you know. I remember talking to you about it back in the day where you were saying, I want to make a difference. obviously, I was part of you creating this home, but at the same time, you were busy with Jules and the foundation.
Absolutely, and the foundation did start with, it was domestic violence shelters. There is such a shortage of supply in these shelters, but I think the thing we realised really quickly was it wasn't actually just about practicality, it was also about aesthetics and the feeling that someone who is in that position feels when they enter one of these places, which isn't bare minimum, it's you are worth feeling warm and bright and welcome and loved. These people are at a crossroads and mainly these women who are in some dire straits and they're standing there from the middle of the night with their kids with nowhere to go. And suddenly they come into this house that someone spent a little bit of time and effort just to make it warm and beautiful and say, yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah.
And then I think you walk into there and then it's uplifting and caring, and then suddenly you've got hopefully the time and space to start focusing on yourself a little bit more, and then on your kids.
And then I guess that expanded to really wanting to do more, and it directed us towards mental health for various reasons. My wife lost her brother to mental health. I lost a band member. We had kids, so we really, was starting to experience certain things with the kids and wanting to create something that could help kids with their mental health. And that's what the program, Open Parachute, so our foundation, that's literally what they do, is they teach kids these skills, and it's in tons and tons of different schools throughout the country. I think we've got about 30 or 40,000 kids that we support so far. I mean, we added 3 schools this week.
I think it's interesting you've gone into kids' mental health because it's all related.
I think when it comes to empathy and just community, and I would have to say I look to my parents as the shining light for that. And it started young, and not to digress back to the Malaysian episode of our lives, but I remember there were certain days where, there was a blind woman that would come on one particular day each week, and my mum would feed her and bring her, and then there was times where I would go into a room and it's like, oh, she's having a nap in our room, and then if it wasn't her, there'd be someone else. My parents were always bringing in people who were struggling, or people from church or something that were not doing well, and they've always been very kind and compassionate. And that extended just to our friendship circles, and then obviously in our home in Adelaide, food was big. That was Mum's way of showing love. She'd be slaving in the kitchen all day, and that was her way. And so it's funny when something like, she'd be watching, and it's just something as simple as someone just hoeing into a beef rendang or a little, some kind of mango curry chicken that she's made, and going, oh my gosh, you see that elation in her face, the things that
made it worthwhile, the effort.
Yeah, and that's her expression of love. Then I married Jules, who cooking was not really a thing for her.
Right, no.
Her favourite meal is tuna mornay, legitimately still is. But her mum's tuna mornay is actually killer. So it's been this amazing thing recently where Jules, in the last few years, she's really tried very hard to cook. So thank you for building a great kitchen that has encouraged Jules.
Yeah, well...
she's a weapon now. She's a great cook.
Well, she's actually being an influencer on it, isn't she? All the stuff that I see on social media and stuff, she's really into it.
Well, I think the beauty is that people sit at home going, we know that she started not being able to cook at all, so if she could do it, I could do it. She was never great at making drinks, and then suddenly she just started experimenting and doing cocktails, and she's found this really great way to do them really easily. And so just made a thing of it.
It sounds like the way that your mum and dad were to people outside your immediate circle, they had created a strong foundation that enabled them to think about everybody else. And church was a big part of your life, from what I understand. Did that come home?
My memories of church were actually sort of, I think my mum and dad were more like, you go to church on a Sunday and then, you live your life like a good person.
Yes.
But we don't have to be involved in everything church.
No, yeah.
They liked going on a Sunday, and then, because I think his brother was a pastor, so he watched his brother, was very involved.
Yeah.
But then ironically, as we became teenagers, we got, when I say we, my brother and myself, we were in the band at church and stuff. Ollie.
Yeah.
So Ollie's a bit older, and he's very musical. I started to sing, so weirdly we got really involved in the band and things like that. And so I think it was, church taught us so much about so many different things, but in particular community. You know, it was weird for me as a singer, because I was singing in a church band where it's literally the goal is to, music represents ushering people into a place where just for those 2 hours on a Sunday, whatever they've gone through in the week, the music has to encourage you and has to just make you feel good for a couple of hours and be able to receive something that hopefully you leave and you want to be a better person, more patient, more kind, more loving. That's the goal anyway. And so music's always like, it's not about you, it has this higher purpose. So it was a weird shift for me when I suddenly went on Idol and it's now about you, like everything that you're doing musically, it's about you. So, but church, I mean, for us socially, it was unbelievable. We had the best mates. We've still got such good mates that we still hang out with, and it was always a central focus for us. Like as far as like there was a central point to go to where we would meet, and church was it for us. Then all of our friendship activities just were like, all right, cool, we're done with the service now. Where are we going for lunch? Where are we going to hang out? Whose house are we going to? And it was always the houses that were the most communally set up that you would end up going to.
Which is why you had this brief.
And I think that's why we always realised if you build it, they will come.
Yes, absolutely.
And if it's a space where it just naturally works. So for all our family, you know, this is very much it's a central point. Everyone loves to hang here. You know, we just went overseas. We just got back from Europe, and Jules's mum was here.
Oh, yeah.
And she was watching the kids and stuff, and so often she rang, she's like, it's like bloody Central Station here. Everyone just drops in, and, you know, she's constantly having to get the door, and we love that. That's how, when we spoke initially, we warned you, this is going to be like a drop-in centre where everyone just hangs, all our family. We love cooking, we love entertaining. We want to be able to open everything up, and we want this house to represent that.
A lot of people say to me, oh, you know, I love to entertain. And then you realise that they love to do it, but they actually don't do it that much. And you guys said, no, we really mean it. And I went, oh, okay. And, you know, it did affect the way that I designed this house in response to your brief to make it open and able to open up and close down and open up. Because you've got to also make it good when you're just here. You can go and hide in here.
That's true. This is where I make my coffees.
If you ever come here and Guy's not here, he's in here. Bye.
I'm probably making my coffee. I'm really glad we went with the simpler, rugged concrete Caesar stone all the way through.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know, there's something about the symmetry of this being that long and all being the same material that I love.
What I love about the bench is, as you say, it's that full length.
Yeah.
But the thickness that we managed to get here, because when you back out here in the space, it just has the strength to hold itself.
Yeah.
You know, like, you got to give it some chunk, otherwise that length doesn't work.
No.
You know?
Now, after living here for a long time, the things that always stick out for me that I love is courage.
Yes.
So I don't have a particular, like, I love concrete. I love black. I love steel. I love how tough this house is, yet still so inviting and warm. I love all the choices we made. We're sitting under arguably the pinnacle of the house, which is, you know, the stairwell. I think I just love things that are brave. That's what this house is to me.
So when you go up and down, these things change in your eye the whole time.
I mean, you remember travelling down to Wollongong, actually.
That's right. That was
seeing the concrete panels, actually concentrating on getting the right sharpness of these edges. Because remember,
look at that profile. Yeah.
well, firstly, it was a bit more like corrugated iron.
Smoother.
It was smoother.
We sharpened up the edges.
But I also love the Frankenstein nuts and bolts that are revealed in an elegant way.
Yeah. Well, that's talking about, so that's that whole idea of form follows function. So if your building is functional, like there's structure in a building, why hide it all?
Yeah.
But in most housing, you're hiding the structure. But in this house, it's got a more of an industrial feel, and it has a more authenticity, and it's more honest because you're showing how the connections actually work. And that actually influences you as a human being because you go, well, if that's being honest, well, maybe I'll be honest today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If I am being honest, I preferred when we were doing this sitting down, because when we're talking and you're standing up, the fact that I've got to look up so much, it's just, feel very Hobbit-like around you.
Once you created a sense of home like you have here, do you see it as forever, or do you have other aspirations or ideas, or are you going to downsize?
I can't ever say forever.
No.
I've lived in LA, we lived in New York for a little bit. I don't think I could live anywhere full-time apart from Australia. I couldn't do anything permanent away from here. And my family's like here, my brothers and little nieces and nephews. And I think for the very first time, I'm in a forever for now home.
Yeah.
I can't see myself getting rid of this house for a long time. If I had to say what my ultimate dream was, it's probably to have a be on the water.
A house on the water.
As in sitting in your backyard and fishing, to me is the most baller thing you can do.
That's it. You've made it. That's a nice dream, I think. Yeah, because it's not just about the fishing off the bat, but there's all the things that come with that. Yeah. So, what do you think about home now that you've created this here, and as a general idea, what's home?
Well, I guess home is a feeling, really. At the end of the day, it's how you feel, and what it represents. It's how I feel when I'm away from it. I'd been away for 5 weeks, and then I met up with Jules, and we were in Italy, and obviously the architecture and the beauty of Venice and the beauty of Milan and all these other places. But we would say the same thing. We really miss our house. We miss our house. And this place for us, it's not just the architecture, obviously, it's the memories and the way we live in here. I think through the pandemic, it taught a lot of people about the value of home. I can't speak for everyone, but for most people that I know, being at home and going through COVID has taught people about what matters and about their own limitations as well.
Yeah, I think home has become something that we realise is much more important to us than we've treated it in society. It really is that foundation. But on that note of just the wider world and the wider community, for me, when I look at it all, and that's why I'm really interested in what you're doing with the Sebastian Foundation, but I am worried about our shared home in that there's just feels like a big gap between the rich and the poor, and it just seems to be widening, and then, geez, where do we go from here? But I'm very optimistic as well about things, but it's a hard time.
I think so much of it is about how we find that right balance, and there's always a right balance, always. It's about making a difference in the little areas that you can.
Yeah.
That's taken me years to figure out, because I hated letting people down. I would always try and please everyone. I ended up just getting really burnt out. So I've figured out, okay, I can do this through my foundation. I can do this through my music and my career. And then I can do this through my daily interactions with people. That's all I can control. And obviously with my family, and beyond that, I can't be everything to everybody. So that's how I'm going to make the world a better place in my world.
Yes.
And beyond that, I'm not really fussed how I'm judged, because I can't do any more. I think we're living in an era where, especially young people, they're so forced to be everything to everyone. And it's a dangerous place to be. It's a dangerous way to live mentally as well.
There's a lot of weight on us all, but we forget that that same weight is on the kids. You know?
Yeah, and way more so than us. Because everyone's external influence and opinions are suddenly projected onto these kids. And so what you post or I mean, the world's just gotten bigger for kids at a much younger age.
That's why I think home's even more important, than ever. You've got to get your home base right, that foundation right.
Yeah.
And that's why, hats off to yourself and Jules about what you're doing with Sebastian Foundation, because there's plenty of kids out there that have a gap in that foundation. And I feel like what you're doing is trying to fill some of those gaps.
Well, it's about what you can control too, isn't it? And you asked me a question about what I remembered about home.
Yes.
And I said, love.
Yeah.
I just remember there was always love. When parents loved us and still love us. And
yeah.
If you can say, I had love in the house.
Yeah. What more could you want?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Beat ourselves up trying to, discipline in the right way and, have the chores and everything.
No.
I think if my kid said that doing an interview with an older Joe Snell,
yeah,
who I would assume is matured like George Clooney, and they said, I just remember a house full of love.
Yeah.
That'd end me.
Yeah.
I'd be very happy.